You smell like Febreze.
So first you go,
Yeah,
and then
I have both. I'm like Godzilla with atomic breath, but no, I'm like a stain stick. Welcome back to another episode of 19. See, look, it's just got jittery again. It's only because I'm live. It's only because I'm live.
I thought it was a special effect for dancing to the tune.
I think everyone in my house is watching a movie on some device.
Yikes.
Including the cats. We have an iPad for each cat.
They're watching the new Garfield movie.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Not the Chris Pratt one, though. They hate Chris Pratt.
Uh-oh. The cats?
Yeah.
Chris Pratt?
I think I've incepted them. Hey, welcome back to another episode of 1980s Now, a weekly examination of the importance of 1980s pop culture
and its influence today.
Its influence today. Hey, my name is Will. Just testing to see if Kat's ready to pick up that ball, because one day I'm just going to show. Grooming her. We're getting her ready.
You know, every time you stop that she and I just have an unrelated conversation. We don't pick up the ball and run
I'm
with
hoping.
We pick up our own ball.
I'm hoping.
A different game.
Yes. Hey, speaking of the folks who are dropping the ball, please welcome my co-hosts and friends. Yeah, friends. Kat and John. Hey, guys. I should say co-hosts.
Oh.
Because they're not co-anything. They just happen to be here. Coincidentally. That's what the co is for.
Oh, yeah. And I'll just coincidentally be visiting you this weekend. Oh, just by chance.
What? This is a surprise to me. I don't remember even giving you my address. Hey,
hello, everyone.
On today's show, we're going to ask the question, where have all the parodies gone? Now, don't answer now. Don't hold, everybody.
Okay.
Hold off. Hey, before that, though, we're going to review current news stories related to 1980s media, including Andrew McCarthy was a dick to Jon Cryer.
Uh-oh.
Gen Z wants their mommy on a job interview. A Dungeons & Dragons companion book inspired by the 1980s. Her name is Rio, and she's been found. And the mysterious Instagram post that has turned on many a Schwartz.
Oh.
Sure.
Don't tell John, but there are time codes in the show notes if you'd like to skip around. And if you want to just skip the show altogether, that's fine. You can go check out John on his very own podcast, Gen X Grown Up, where I most recently listened to him crush his opponents in a very serious debate about fictional villains in different media.
Oh,
I also
you heard that one, did you?
Yeah.
That was stressful.
You sounded stressed. I'm not sure it was crushing. It was close. It was tight.
I got to say, I've got it in for George anyway, as it is. So I expected him to just blow it as far as judging goes, because he was the judge of John and Mo. And when it came to John won, I don't know if I should say who won or lost, but let's just say, I expected George to just fudge it so it would be like evenly matched the whole time for the purposes of the show. But in the end, I really did agree with George and how he rendered his verdict. I think it was very, they were well reasoned.
Mm-hmm. He has more respect for the art of debate than he does for messing with us.
Right. Yeah.
That definitely came through. And I will also be one of those unusual people who agrees with George every once in a while on something.
Wow.
The way that he handled that.
Weird.
Hey, before we get started on the show officially, I've got a couple of announcements. Both are related. I swear something happens in John's house when he hears that sound. I think he's the Manchurian podcast. Two related to music. Hey, later this week, listen for my chat with author Stephen Vass. Steve wrote, "Let the Music Play, How R&B Fell in Love with 80s Synths." And you may not remember, you probably don't remember, but a couple of years ago when Steve was just exploring doing this book, he started a Kickstarter and we found out about it and promoted it at the time. So the book is finally out in the U.S. It was out overseas a month or so earlier. It's fantastic. I've read it. It is not what I expected, I will tell you. It is much better. I did expect, based on what he had explained to me, which is, and I'll just read you from even the website here. It says it's the overlooked story of how R&B, disco, and funk were transformed by the explosion of music tech in the era of ghetto blasters and Ronald Reagan. And I thought it was going to be more technical and wonky. No, it is narrative. It is these really fascinating stories about these musicians and how, and since, or just to sort of, play a role or character in how they develop the music, but these stories are very interesting, and it's mind blowing how he put this thing together, but it's really fascinating. Anyway.
On the topic of books we're awaiting the release of.
Yeah.
How's your book going, Will?
Oh, that one.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you, John, for asking. I think, I've got it in a form where I shared it with one person so far, at least, just to get some initial feedback. I definitely have some work to do, but everything I wanted to accomplish, and I was late on accomplishing by the end of last year is done. And now it's just a lot of fine tuning, and taking folks' feedback and maybe using that or not, or dismissing it to modify it. Screw you, I wanted it to be like that. Put my foot down. It's supposed to be terrible.
So we're doing, like in the development world, are you doing what's considered waterfall right now, which is whatever there is to do, I'll just do that next? Or are you approaching it from more of like an agile thing where I have these tasks to accomplish by this and this task, because that can kind of give you an idea of delivery, but I'm not sure how you're approaching it. Do you have it on a timeline, or you just kind of hand to mouth doing the work?
Oh, holy shit, Kat. I mean, right. Did you get any of that? I didn't get any of that.
I heard waterfall, and I heard
I need that.
Agile.
When I heard waterfall, I was like, this sounds like fun. And then the rest of the sentence went on. I was like, this does not sound like fun.
Flip open your universal John's later and see what it is that I was saying.
Yeah, what I had, John, and I haven't, I have to do it again, I suppose. But what I had was a serial killer board, that takes up,
yes.
I don't know, a third, maybe a half of my kitchen wall of Post-its, which are the structure of the book, and I rearranged it.
Big fun for the wife when she has the ladies over.
Right. What's fantastic is when someone slams a door and I got to put them back up on the wall. That's fun. That's fun. I numbered them. So
what if the book were in this order instead?
Yeah, I was
now?
Wait, say that again. And then I have, based on the recent, the stuff that I've been doing this year, I created a to-do list, which was also a series of Post-its, and I've been moving them from the to-do to completed column. And they're all in the completed now, I think, except for maybe two sort of high-level things. There you go. I don't know if that answers your question.
So you got a Kanban board running, and you have tasks you're moving to different swim lanes.
Yeah. I love swimming. I love waterfalls.
Swim blades?
I love the group Can, who did that song in the 1980s where they sampled Rose Garden. That was fantastic. All right. Hey, anyway, check out Steve's book. It's really fantastic. I recommend it. And one other thing I want to tell you guys about music related. Thanks, John, for asking. I appreciate that. I wanted to let you guys know, I found out about that. The DB's debut album, Stands for Decibels, has been released on CD and vinyl for its first time in the U.S. and also on all digital platforms. Who's the DBs? If you're not familiar with the DBs, it's one of those groups that you'll regret having missed in the 1980s. Pitchfork, for example, cited the group, this album in particular, Stands for Decibels, among its top 100 albums of the 1980s. And All Music referred to them as the band that bridged the gap between classic 70s power pop and the jangly new wave of the smart pop personified by R.E.M.
When in the 80s, though? I mean, I could have missed it if it was extreme late 80s, I suppose. But if it was mid 80s, I have no excuse.
It was the very beginning, 1980.
Okay. My excuse is I was still escaping country at that point. Okay. So
get away.
And I was not escaping anything. Why have I not heard of them?
I don't know, but you're going to want to. Check out this record. Seriously, it's really fantastic. It's definitely, of that era of early 1980s, and you can see certainly why these folks praise it. It's these four guys, Peter, Chris, Gene, and Will, who they came up actually from North Carolina, moved to New York in the late 1970s, created this band. They performed at PBGB's, Maxwell's, all the big clubs, certainly the influential venues at the time. Even R.E.M. Mike Mills praises this album as a defining moment in his band's genesis, saying that, quote, this is the one that let me know we weren't alone, that there were others out there with the same curiosity, the same willingness to dive into melody, structure, and pop sensibility.
Wow.
Anyway, I encourage you to check it out. Again, first time on vinyl. It's now available digitally. And this later in the summer, the band's going to actually announce a fall multi-format reissue of their second album, Repercussion, whose street to date will coincide with extremely rare American live dates. So there you go. Once you get hooked on their music that you missed somehow, I'm betting you can have a chance to see them live in the States. All right, hey, I want to tell you how Andrew McCarthy was a dick. So let's get to that. Hey! Let's get caught up on 1980s Andrew McCarthy was a dick news.
Page 4.
As reported by Entertainment Weekly, Jon Cryer says Andrew McCarthy was a dick. I got to tell you, before this started, I was going to plan on saying see how many times I could say Andrew McCarthy was a dick.
You're up to at least 4 or 5 at this point.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Yeah.
You're doing good.
So Jon Cryer, it turns out, still believes that Andrew McCarthy was a dick during their Brat Pack era, even if Demi Moore disagrees. Joined by Ali Sheedy, the trio reunited at the Tribeca Film Festival to mark the premiere of McCarthy's Brats, a documentary about the group of young actors once branded the Brat Pack of Hollywood by the 1985 New York Magazine article. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. During the Q&A session, attended by people. Yeah, of course it was.
As they often are.
Those people.
How many times am I going to make this joke? Yeah. Cryer didn't hesitate to acknowledge his tense relationship with McCarthy when they first crossed paths on a film set. What was that film? What was that film, Kat? Come on, what could it have been?
It was Pretty in Pink.
That's right!
Ooh, I get a little flourish.
Cryer told the crowd, quote, "When we made Pretty in Pink, we didn't get along because he was a dick." What does that sound for? Every time
that's you saying Jon Cryer was a dick.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we're going to get that every time now.
To his credit, McCarthy didn't disagree. He said, quote, "That's very true."
Wow.
Now, it turns out, though, fellow Brat Pack alum Moore, who wasn't in the film but starred opposite McCarthy in St. Elmo's Fire, offered the sole dissenting opinion, saying, "Well, I didn't think he was a dick." To which Cryer swiftly replied, "Well, he wasn't a dick to you." To avoid any confusion, though, Cryer later expanded on his remarks in a Saturday Twitter post, noting that McCarthy was, quote, "sitting 2 feet away when I said this," end quote, and dismissing the idea that any hard feelings remained. "For the record," he wrote, "the man is a prince. We were just too young to understand each other."
Okay.
So if you sit 2 feet away from him and call him a dick, doesn't that make you the dick? Perhaps.
Isn't this like a guys busting on each other? Well, no, not this situation, but what you just said, John. I mean, isn't that, something that guys do anyway?
In this scenario, right.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
That's busting on each other's chops. Yeah.
Right. And it sounds like it was a version of busting on chops.
But not at the time of the filming, though.
Not at the time of the filming. No, it sounds like he really thought that. Yeah. And now he feels the freedom to say this thing.
Sure.
Yes, he really did feel it. And according to McCarthy, even it's true. And but they did make amends not too long ago. It turns out that during their on-stage conversation, McCarthy confirmed that he later apologized to his co-star when they crossed paths in 2012 backstage at The View. Think about
interesting.
20. Yeah, I mean, how long after is that? Pretty in Pink is what, like 85 or something? 86?
85. It's like 26-ish years later.
This is a long time now. And with the advent of when I first had Facebook, I was like, there's a lot of people I got to apologize to. All right, let me just think right now. And I'm like, "Dear so-and-so, sorry I was a dick." Now, everybody was kind enough to write back and be like, hey, you weren't a dick. Or, "Thank you for saying you're sorry." Or, "We were all young at the time. I was probably a dick too." But Facebook had been around for a while by then. All right, whatever. And then during a more recent visit to The View, Cryer told the hosts, quote, "What I realize now," he wrote a terrific memoir called Brat. "He was already struggling with alcoholism when we were shooting the movie. He was going through some stuff that was such a lesson for me. It's all about projection. You never know," end quote. So Cryer suggests that maybe it almost seems to be like, I thought he was a dick because he had this attitude, but his attitude was based on his struggles. So he really wasn't being a dick to me. I just projected that he was being a dick. But McCarthy says I was a dick. And you can have struggles and not be a dick.
Right.
I don't know, whatever.
It sounds like a little bit of both. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like if a dick falls in the forest and no one is around to be offended by it. Are you still being a dick?
Yeah. Huh. So I'll think about that now for a moment.
I'm not going to think about that one too much. I'm just going to say,
okay.
Couldn't it be a combination? Perhaps, he was going through some stuff and that affected his behavior. And then when you find out, like about the behavior, as an outsider, you can feel like, oh man, that must have been a lot. Well, that explains it. And then you can be forgiving and,
there's the explaining it though. I often have some run-ins where we're managing some community and whatever and go, well, that guy's being a real asshole. And you go, hey, well, he's having some mental health issues. And I go, well, people with mental health issues can be assholes too. It doesn't, does not negate the act that you could be.
Absolutely.
You can have that and not be a dick about it. So
fact.
That's not a
fact.
That's not a, it's not the panacea to heal dickdom just by having a problem.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying is, maybe you're not saying this, but it doesn't insulate you from responsibility either.
Exactly.
Right? What you mean?
Exactly.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm glad he apologized.
Yeah.
That he saw that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. You can be a victim and also kind of a jerk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Simultaneously.
And the reason I'm a petty person, apparently, apparently I should say
We
apparently.
love that about you.
I say apparently as if I just learned this about myself. But
so I hear.
We invited Andrew McCarthy to talk to us about his book when he wrote it. And it was one of those, we'll see if we can fit you in kind of things. And then we most recently asked him about talking to us about brats, and they said, he just doesn't have time to talk to everybody, and maybe next time.
Okay.
And then just a couple days later, I hear him on this podcast that's much smaller than we are, is only like a few months old, can't possibly have a following, and doesn't sound very professional.
Oh my gosh.
Whatever.
They must have known somebody.
I know this makes me sound like a dick, but whatever. I'm a dick.
Well, he was just intimidated by the audio quality of this show and felt that he would not live up to your standards.
Yes.
Maybe he's like, I need to be on a show where I could be an asshole to everybody. Those guys seem like they could stand up for themselves. They really got a dick on that show.
My mic sounds better than all the hosts.
Yes, right. All right. Hey, also this week in 1980s news, according to resume templates. Yes, that is where we've gone for news now. That's we've hit that level of the barrel. We're not quite scraping it yet, but we're at the resume templates level.
Okay.
I thought this was interesting. According to resume templates, 1 in 4 Gen Zers brought a parent to a job interview.
Wow. Wait, Gen Z, what's the age range again? It's not
Gen Z is the
12, right?
I'm sorry?
They're not like 12-year-olds, right?
No. They're adults. It's like 96 to 2012, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
So they're at least like 18.
Yeah, there are kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 18 to 27. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking for years, but yeah, the ages are around 18 to 27.
Yeah.
They're our children, as John says, as said before. You can't blame them. We raised them, but I don't think any of our kids are like this, but you guys can tell me. Part of the bad reputation they're getting is that they lack independence, lack motivation, real world knowledge, basically the opposite of us, even though they're our children somehow. Well, along those lines, resume templates surveyed 1,400 U.S.-based Gen Zers who looked for a job within the past year to understand how much they rely on their parents when job searching. And that's fine. I help my kids, with that sort of thing, making resumes and responding to emails, just, thinking it through. Okay.
Yeah.
These folks took it a little bit further. Nearly 1 in 10 had their parents complete their HR screener calls. So, HR is like the first level of calling to get you past to speak to the actual hiring person, maybe. Yeah, they had their parents do it. When asked why they did this, Gen Zers report that they believe their parents' work is better than theirs, or they don't know how to talk to hiring managers, lack motivation, or doing so would negatively impact their mental health.
It tells me that the Gen Zers, and I'm not casting aspersions, self-reporting, it sounds like they have not yet developed their customer service voice.
Yeah.
Like there's how you talk to everybody in the real world, and there's how when you get on the phone and you're either getting or giving customer support, there's a certain kind of formality and tone, positivity, and you carve out all the snark that you enjoy, and I could see why maybe they have not been able to filter that out of themselves because of the way they interact on the reg with everyone on the planet via social. Quick bursts of memes and stuff. They might not have a way to exercise that kind of customer service voice. Right. Which is also good job voice, I expect.
Now, why do you think, though, that I'm suggesting by implication that you may have had that at a similar age, but they don't? Is there a change in the opportunities we had as young people that they're deprived of, that, they don't get that kind of experience to find that voice?
What are you thinking, Kat?
Well, I'm thinking, just leapfrogging off of what you were just saying, like, using social media and creating memes or whatever, all the stuff that they are exchanging is very different from what we had, like talking on the phone. we just, we had to use the phone, and they're not necessarily using the phone.
Right.
Yeah. I know some young folks who don't call them,
Yeah.
A phone call, and they're mad. You're like, why are you calling me?
Right.
Well, I want to talk to you. Well, text me. I don't want to talk to it. I mean, it's fine. I like you, but I don't want to talk to you. I want to interact via text in a controlled environment,
right,
where I can formulate my responses and make them however witty and whatever emojis go with them to get my thought out. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But we didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
My parents said, ring, ring, answer the phone, Jonathan.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so my choice was to answer the phone in my kid voice, and they say, hello, ma'am. And I go, hey, this is the red residence. Hi. I'm like, hello, ma'am. Is your husband home? I'm like,
right.
And then you develop the, hello, thanks for calling. Can I help you?
John, when we still had a landline and I would answer the phone and I'd say, hello. And multiple times people said, can I talk to your mom or dad? And I thought I was using a good phone voice, but
No, I'm in house alone.
Mature, yeah. But this is like 15 years ago. This is like I was a full grown up, and they thought I was the kid just from the tone. But I thought I sounded pretty good.
You sound great right now.
Oh, thank you.
Perfectly adult. And here's a stat that I teased. 26% of all Gen Zers who have undergone a job search in the past year say that they have taken a parent to an interview. Of the Gen Zers who brought their parents, 31% had a parent accompany them to an in-person interview, while 29% had them join a virtual interview.
Wow.
I hoped that meant like, go with you to the lobby for moral support.
Yep, me too.
I really hope that didn't mean,
right.
Hi, nice to meet you, Mr. Jones. Here's mommy.
Yeah.
Right, maybe.
Your mom in the lobby is one thing. It's still something that is maybe a little bit too clingy, but it's something.
Yeah.
Something else entirely if you're on the call as an equal participant.
An in-person one, maybe it's just got a ride. Maybe just needed a ride.
Well, some of them were that way, but for 26% of them, their parent physically sat in the interview room.
Wow.
Nope.
And an additional 7% say their parents answered the questions.
Oh my gosh.
Nope. Double nope. Well, hire the parents.
Oh my gosh.
So why should we hire you to be the bank manager?
Right.
Mom? Of those who attended virtual interviews, 29% of the parents were visible on camera.
Oh.
And of those, 85% directly spoke with the hiring manager.
Wow.
Well, I guess I'm happy that some of them were off camera.
Yes.
At least.
Some of them were.
Yes. It turns out the majority of the off-camera parents fed answers to their child.
What's your biggest weakness? Line?
Yep.
My biggest weakness.
Tell him you care too much. I care too much. You're an overachiever. I'm an overachiever.
You're aggressively independent.
I'm aggressively independent. You're hired.
Says my mom.
Brandon says, that's fucked up. Suck it up, Gen Z, and learn how to stand on your own 2 feet.
I'm really happy to say that neither of my children would have wanted me or their dad anywhere near them when they got their jobs.
Or afterward. Yeah. At a company party.
Yeah, there you go.
Marcus says, or maybe don't act high and mighty calling out, quote, boomers. If you can't figure out how to get a job, it keeps you sheltered from, so that boomers don't have, so it keeps you sheltered so that the boomers don't have to. Are you suggesting we're boomers, Marcus? People keep erasing our generation. I don't think Marcus would do that.
Yeah, there we go.
And Darth says that is shitty parenting. Yeah. No kidding. All right. Hey, another 1980s news. I'm super excited about this here. Coming soon from Dice Dungeons, 80s Adventures.
Yes.
So it turns out that 80s Adventures, it's not out yet. It's just, they're about to launch a Kickstarter. 80s Adventures is an innovative nostalgia experience for RPG players. So the way it sounds to me is, for folks who play D&D, 5e, it seems like this is in particular, it's a book that allows you to adapt the game in such a way as to incorporate 80s themed items, characters, monsters, and locations. And so, it works hand in hand with the rules that you already know and use for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. This particular 80s Adventures provides tons of ways to incorporate the things you love from 80s movies and TV. So they've got new gear, magic items, and abilities inspired by the iconic toys and gadgets of the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, yeah.
Can't wait to find out what these are. And according to the creators of this Dice Dungeons, you'll be able to create characters that truly embody the spirit of the best decade for pop culture.
My mind is reeling. Just reeling with what this could mean. And I want to know all the details because they talk about races and subclasses and spells and items.
Yeah.
And I think, but it sounds like it doesn't supplant the Dungeons and Dragons ecosystem, but adds these 80s elements onto it. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, it could be a half orc pop and locker.
Right.
And, have a +2 throwing Rubik's Cube.
Uh-huh. The points are sharpened. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think, and my alignment is like chaotic gnarly or something, It's like, are they adding is it just flourishes on the existing stuff, or is it like expanding like the alignment chart? So there's new, there's lawful and evil and neutral. We have gnarly, and the other end we have bodacious. Like, what are those things? Tubular, right? Yeah. I want to see a book. I saw the cover of the book and I saw the list, but yeah, I want to someone spell it out for me. I want to know what all is in it.
I saw an image of a fanny pack.
Yeah. Keep your spells in a trapper keeper. That'd be great.
Oh, perfect. Maybe there can be a gremlin option for like a companion, or
sure.
You could be part gremlin.
I can see a spell, gag me with a spoon, and you actually manifest a spoon in your throat.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love that.
I get to spoon us.
Now here's an image from their their splash page that you'll notice is saved as Mall of Adventure. And I think this is so cool because it still looks very D&D as far as the characters. Yeah. But there's obvious 80s flourishes and things, and this will either drive you just drive you crazy as far as inspiring you to want to pick up some dice and play, or you might be turned off to this if it's not for you. But I'm guessing if you turned off to it, you probably don't like our show either. But less like John, I'm excited about it. I really look forward to reading the book. But just to tease you, I guess a little bit more, like John alluded to the subclasses. Some of them are like they give us some names here: Ghost Hunter Ranger.
Oh,
for legal purposes, not Ghostbuster. Yeah, I think they're really clever and fun the way they work these in. Way of the Crane Monk.
So it's Mr. Miyagi, right?
Yeah. And Relic Hunter Rogue. Who's that?
Oh.
Indiana Jones?
Yeah, I'm guessing, right, yeah. And to match the brains and brawn of the new subclasses are equally bodacious monsters, including the horrifying neon-lit demons and giant marshmallow golems.
Oh.
I just love love this. I really want to play this. I immediately texted this to my RPG group, my friends, and they were like, all right, we got it. We're getting this. Some of them signed up right away for it, as I did.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I saw farther down the page, there were actually playable modules that anticipated those rules being in place, and these adventure modules are ready for it.
Yes. And what's so cool about those is they play off of the tropes of 80s films. Like one is Curse of Garnet Lake, which they say is inspired by 80s slasher films. And Camp Spellbrook, which I was surprised because I thought that might have been a slasher film. But no, it says it's inspired by summer camp comedies. I want to know what it's like to play a comedy.
Like a Meatballs.
80s. Yeah. What's an 80s comedy D&D campaign? That I want to try.
Panty raid on all the fairies.
Yeah. We've got Bush. Yes. Anyway, if you want to join, their Kickstarter, you can get in line right now to be notified as soon as it goes live. You can sign up with Dice Dungeons, and in addition to that, you'll get access to a realm of exclusive content and digital treasures. So not only will you be notified when the Kickstarter officially launches, immediately you're going to get access to some goodies that other folks won't. All right, cool. Seriously, do it. Let's see this thing happen. I want to have it already now.
And that's as excited as Will gets right there.
Right. Can you tell? Hey, I know it doesn't sound like it because our show sounds so damn good, but we don't have a big corporate sponsor or a giant podcast network behind us. No. In fact, this show is brought to you week after week with the generosity of folks just like you, listeners who give us $1 or $2 or more every month to help us pay all the different bills associated with creating a wonderful show about the 1980s. To find out how you can support our show with $1 or $2 or the many free ways to help our show, visit 1980snow.com/support. Whatever you do, thank you so much. All right, hey, another 1980s news. Per consequence of sound, Rio has been identified.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
Never occurred to me that she wasn't identified.
Is that right?
So I didn't know that she wasn't known.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm wondering about that. I guess to get everybody caught up real quickly, we're talking about Duran's album, their second studio album. Rio, which was released 42 years ago. Look, it's primarily notable for its hit songs. Rio, Hungry Like the Wolf, Save a Prayer. Gotta get those articles right. But the album's cover is, I don't want to say equally iconic, but it's up there.
It is. Oh, yeah.
Instead of featuring a photo of the band, as they did on their debut album, the cover artwork is a portrait of a woman with striking makeup, a large smile, and black hair. And of course, it was painted by artist Patrick Nagel, who was commissioned by the band after co-manager Paul Barrow discovered his art while browsing a Playboy magazine. Patrick Nagel, sort of started out by doing artwork for that publication. Creating what became known as his trademark style, Nagel presented the band with two options: a woman with a flower in her hair sitting sideways. I don't know if that image is out there, Kat. I'd like to find it if it is.
Yeah. You know what? I think I might have seen it recently, actually.
Okay. And the chosen art of the woman smiling that actually made the album cover. Keyboardist Nick Rhodes recalled, quote, "We all said instantly, yes, that's it. That's the cover." So, Kat,
yes,
you said you were surprised that nobody knew who she was already?
Right. I never thought about it. Well, I'm not saying I knew who it was because I had no idea. Yeah. But it just struck me as like, wait, this was a thing. Like, I was fascinated by it, someone hunting it down.
So how did you think he created his art then? You thought he had...
I thought he just created this.
So if he just created it though, then there wouldn't be anybody to find.
Right. It never occurred to me.
It just looks like a lady.
Right. Like, it never occurred to me that there was somebody to find. I thought, I thought that this is from his brain.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty wild to me and cool. It is really cool.
Yeah, we're talking about this album, of course.
Yeah.
Well, look, what has been known is that Nagel worked with models or used photos from magazines or other sources for inspiration. Now, he did take pictures of his own models and use those as well, but there's often times where he saw a picture in a magazine or somewhere, and he used that as the basis for his artwork. Well, as we're mentioning here, the inspiration for this particular work of art has been found. She's model Marcy Hunt. In an Instagram post, Patrick Nagel historian art and art broker Monica Moynihan explained the fan account @NagelAngel spent, quote, countless hours, end quote, figuring out the reference photo for the album cover was pulled from a 1981 issue of Vogue Paris. I can't even conceive of what that is, that process to go through to find out this.
Right.
But Hunt reportedly retired from modeling in favor of a more private life. But after Duran reposted the revelation, Hunt commented on it. She explained that even she was unaware that her Vogue editorial shoot was used as a reference for the cover. She wrote, quote, "This is so cool. I absolutely did not know until now that this photo of me was used for the Rio cover. Very exciting. Loved Duran and danced to their music often in the 80s and later at my wedding." So here I've got a picture. We've got what it looked like here.
You have to show this.
Someone, this is as we're slowly
I think it's super interesting that she got out of modeling to do something a little more private, and yet the last time she modeled, nobody knew about it. So she's pretty private. It's like, well, nobody knows you're modeling, so just keep modeling. You'll be very private. That's not a problem.
Yes, unless you make it, right? I mean, it's only private because nobody.
Well, she made it to cover this album. She just didn't identify her, but
she didn't.
But yes,
know.
you have this picture. You have this picture, and I looked at them side by side, and I did the whole highlights magazine, find all the differences thing.
Yeah,
and I don't see it other than the general angle of her head.
Wow.
I mean. So
look at her
the
lips.
Rio cover has very distinctive eyebrows. Hers were covered by glasses. So how would you know? The mouth has a very distinctive shape. That's not the shape. The eyes have this very almond shape, where she has these not almond shape eyes. It's very, nothing about it says it's that girl. It looks like an actress going, "Let me do the Rio girl pose," even though I'm not her. Okay. I mean, I believe Nagel if he says this is it. But if I was looking through, if I was at the police station, they hand me the book and go, flip through and let me know, show me the girl that looks like the Rio cover. Yeah. I'd go right past her.
Really? Wow.
Show me the girl who was dancing on the sand.
Right. Yes, exactly. To be fair, yeah. If you look at this original and then the end product, there's differences, absolutely. But that when they're overlaid like that, and I feel like her lips,
the mouth is
the same.
Identical, yeah.
Her mouth looks the same to me, and I have to say, I think it's worn off by now. But I put on redder than I would ever wear lip gloss on tonight in honor of this story. Just had to say that because you probably can't see it. No, can't even. I think it's worn off.
Can't see it.
So you did that, but then you had spaghetti, and it just.
I drank water. Yeah, it's probably on my straw.
Yeah, well, John, it's not going to be one for one. He did change those things. Now, Nagel passed away a long time ago. He passed away in the 1980s, actually, not long after he did this art. Fortunately, he never really got to experience the accolades and the adulation that he would get later years.
Yeah.
But his technical assistant at the time, Barry Hahn, confirmed that is the photo that inspired the cover.
I wonder if AI helped discover it. Do you think that was
I don't know.
a possibility? Discover it. Or Will, you were saying you can't imagine what the process would be of hunting it down. And
comparators.
Yeah. I don't know how to use AI, to make this happen. But
ChatGPT, who is Rio? What? Rio was a river no. Who?
Capital of Brazil. Yeah.
All right.
Who let the dogs out?
Who? Damn it, who? All right, finally, in 1980s news per comicbook.com, a mysterious post has Mel Brooks fans in a frenzy. So, on June 10th, Josh Gad posted a photo on Instagram that features, I just realized this episode's going to be me complaining about people that I don't like.
Freaking Josh Gad.
For no reason that's really related to them. It's just my own. It's projection. I'm sure they have stuff going on. Well, I have stuff going on too. All right, whatever. Anyway, Josh Gad posted a photo on Instagram that features the cover page of a screenplay. The name of the film is cropped out of the photo, and the names of the director and the creator of the characters upon whom the script is presumably based are also partially redacted. So you can see it has the names of Josh Gad, Dan Hernandez, and Benji Samit as they wrote it. But whoever is directing this script, it's been obliterated. And based on characters, based on characters created by, it's mostly obscured.
Yeah.
But the name Mel is clear, as well as the letters KS, which, and let's face it, all of this is posted on Instagram. So undoubtedly, this was all purposeful, that you can see what you can see. And at the bottom of the page, left untouched, are the words EXT dot, which on a screenplay stands for exterior, and it says Starfield.
Oh.
Along with the picture, Gad writes, quote, just handed in a film script that I think, now when you read this, as I read this, keep in mind, he wrote it.
All right.
Just handed in a film script that I think may be the funniest and best thing I've ever worked on. Maybe. I guess you could decide that for yourself if it's the
not
best.
very modest.
And I'm
humble brag.
And I'm so freaking excited. Working with my boys, Dan Hernandez and Benji Sammet, has been a heaven on earth and many other planets as well. Love you, boys.
Okay.
Anyway, it seems likely that the script being penned is a sequel to Spaceballs. I don't know why Josh Gad bothers me. There's just something about him that just bothers me.
Well, you know he bothers me. I told you, between him and Patton Oswalt, they are getting jobs I could do.
Right.
It's like, what do we need? Well, we need, extra size goofball. I'm like, that's me. I can be an extra size goofball. Just call me. But they get all the jobs. They're like the Chris Pratt of oversized goofball actors.
Yeah.
They're getting all the roles.
Right.
And there's room for big goofballs, and nobody calls.
Yes. There's something, look, I don't know the guy. I'm not looking for a lawsuit. Just something about that guy. I think there's something dark. Just look, it's much as my opinion. You can't, sue me for that.
Don't invite him on the show.
But I didn't think much about it until, and again, this is projection, like Jon Cryer said. We started our podcast right before the pandemic. We had already been reaching out to actors and are working our way up the chain, to bigger and bigger actors. And we had a couple of big stars lined up that were going to be on our show until Josh Gad decides to do this podcast now, reunited apart or something, where he starts putting casts together of 80s movies that hadn't, done podcasts before. And some of those people were scheduled to be on our show. And then after that, they didn't do it. So, whatever.
Now we see where the animosity stems from.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, look, we've talked about this before. But celebrity podcasts, leave something for the lay people, for fucking Christ's sake. You can afford to do something bigger and better. More professional. Do that.
Right.
Whatever. Anyway, whatever. Fuck all these people.
Like this. Don't do a podcast. Do your script or whatever.
Yes. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, released back in 1987, Spaceballs was co-written, produced, and directed by Mel Brooks. If you're not familiar with it, it takes a satirical look at the Star Wars franchise alongside other well-known sci-fi properties in a way that only Brooks can parody. It starred Bill Pullman, John Candy, Rick Moranis, Daphne Zuniga, and Brooks. It takes place in a distant galaxy on the titular planet. The titular planet. Spaceballs is the planet. It follows a renegade space pilot, Lone Star, and his half-man, half-dog partner, Barf, as they attempt to rescue Princess Vespa, who's been kidnapped by the evil Dark Helmet. And it's one of my favorite Mel Brooks films. For me, look, I love Mel Brooks. But I want to say 50% of his films are like solid, and 50% I'm like, It's probably the more recent ones that are more like, I guess.
Right.
But the classic ones, the older ones, solid. Maybe it's more 75-25.
So if this is genuine,
Yeah.
are there any criteria required for you to buy into a Spaceballs sequel?
Well, yeah.
I think I have two.
Yes. Okay.
I have two requirements.
I've just got
I
the
need
one.
Rick Moranis back.
Yep.
Rick Moranis must be back.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
I need him in the helmet. I know he's a lot of stuff he hasn't done, but we'd need him for that.
Yes.
And we would also need Spaceballs, the popcorn bucket. Because they're the one that set that up with the merchandising in their film in the early 80s, mid 80s, I guess. And now that's happening, Deadpool and Logan the movie, Deadpool and Logan the bucket, there's the merchandise. Wasn't there like a towel or a flamethrower? I don't know what all
Spaceballs, the mud flap.
The mud flap. Yeah. So you would need that kind of merchandising.
Yes.
Spaceballs 2, the
search for more money.
Yep.
That's what it was, right? Yeah, I agree, John.
Yes.
I hadn't thought about the popcorn one, but Rick Moranis, absolutely. And it turns out actually that rumors of a Spaceballs sequel have been floating around Hollywood since the original film came out in 1987. And one of them was a pitch that Rick Moranis made to Brooks. In 2013, he told Hebe magazine that he pitched a sequel just a couple years after the original film premiered. He told them, quote, "My idea for it was Spaceballs 3, The Search for Spaceballs 2.
Oh, I like that. Yes. That's clever.
I mean, that title alone sets up something that could be very, self-referential. And
yes. Yeah.
Moranis continued, "I was unable to make a deal with Mel. I couldn't make a deal. It would have been something I would have wanted to do, but that ship has sailed," end quote. Now, look, we know Moranis has been, largely absent from acting. He didn't appear in any of the Ghostbusters films, but in 2018, he did reprise the role of Dark Helmet for a cameo in the sitcom The Goldbergs. In voice, at least. There was another actor that had the costume on and did, the body work, so to speak, including some stunts, because there is a fight where he fights with the actor who plays the young Adam Goldberg. They do have a Schwartz battle. But he voices the character that's in a dream of this of Adam, the young Adam, who storms into his room, I think via the closet, and the fight is only broken up by the fact that Dark Helmet drops, I think, a script for Spaceballs 2, and it's like, "Oh, that's just something I've been noodling around with, although it's very good," and he has Adam assure him that he will try to make it. We also had a short-lived animated series sequel without Moranis in 2008. Anyway.
We did?
Yeah. That's short-lived.
How?
Probably a couple of days.
Came and went.
In 2015, Brooks told Adam Carolla on Carolla's Take a Knee podcast that he'd like to make a follow-up to his 1980s film. And so, look, here we are. Maybe this is it. So there you go. I don't know. But so this raises our thing I wanted to talk to you guys mostly about is this idea that we haven't seen Spaceballs yet, and we don't really see parodies anymore. We know there's a new Naked Gun film coming, but I was thinking about this. Do we really know it's going to be done in the style of the previous films, where it's lampoon other films and genres and tropes and cliches that are baked into our pop culture? We don't know.
Right.
It could just be a comedy that follows this police detective without the wacky meta jokes. I don't know.
That'd be a shame.
But this
waste of an IP.
This led me down a rabbit hole of trying to find out where to have all the parodies gone. and in part, some of the stuff I'm going to recite to you here comes from an article from Mental Floss, and some stuff from No Film School, I think, too, maybe. Mostly Mental Floss. But I'm going to tell you guys an interesting fact that you probably know already because I've mentioned it once before. The first parody I recall seeing, and I want to ask you guys if you can remember which parody you first recall seeing, is the first movie I ever recall seeing.
Oh.
That was 1977's Kentucky Fried Movie.
I'm not certain I've ever even seen that. I've heard of it.
Teenage high school girls in trouble.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, John, that is all right. Okay, here you go. So John's referring to. So what the film is it's a sketch movie that pokes fun at the world of television. They have these little interstitials that are like news reporters, but that sort of holds it together. And they have these sketches with different topics that are, again, plays on stuff you might see in the TV in the 1970s. And my parents took me to this drive, and again, it's the first movie I can recall ever seeing. I don't know if it's. I think it was probably a goof. You probably paid by the carload to get into the drive-in, but they told us we had to hide in the back seat so that we can get in for free and not have to pay. So my sister and I hid under like a blanket in the back seat. We had our pajamas on already. I was 6 years old.
Right. Yes. Yep.
I remember, as many of us did, standing behind the front seat, holding on sort of that bench seat in front of us to see over and what was going on and watching the movie that way. Lo and behold, yes, the Catholic school girls in trouble sketch is the one that stands out the most because boy, oh boy, there's a lot of naked breasts in it. In fact, I think the first image, when you see the title of this sketch, is a woman soaping up her naked bosoms.
In a shower and squishing them against the shower door from the inside. Yes.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay.
She's really clean by the end of this. I'm telling you.
Really clean.
Oh, yes.
Super clean. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember feeling embarrassed for this, and sort of ducking down and hiding, feeling like I shouldn't have seen that.
Yeah.
And eager to rent it again later.
Yes. I'm going to wait. I'm going to make a note to myself here. Gotta write this down. And then lo and behold, in the span of, I don't know, the 5 or 6 minutes that the sketch is, there's another 3 or 4 or 5 sets of naked boobs. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and that's why I watch so much porn now. There you go.
Big Jim Slade.
John knows this movie really well.
Oh yeah.
I'll let this be my foray into porn,
It's probably, yes. Your foray. Cat, it's a gate. It's a what entry gate? What is it? A gateway.
Oh,
a gateway
to porn. Yeah.
I want to see. I want to check in with you at the end of that day and see what you're
It is
watching.
all so tame, really.
It is.
Yeah, it's 70s.
Yeah.
Right.
70s nudity, right? So
Yes.
they're doing worse on Netflix on the daily.
Brandon says Kentucky Fried Movie went in many different directions. Very funny. Yeah. Chad says went trick-or-treating as Dark Helmet one year. Oh, yeah. Chad's calling for an RV popcorn bucket. All right. They're flying RV, their ship that they're.
Well, that's good.
Anyway, most importantly about Kentucky Fried Movie is it was directed by John Landis. You know him. He directed tons of movies during the 1980s. I think he's been Me Too'd or something since. I think his kid has been too. I don't know. Don't sue me with Josh Gad, okay? I don't want a class action suit. Allegedly. Anyway, but it was written by Jim Abrams, David Zucker, and Jerry Zucker. Zaz. We talked about them a few weeks ago, too, when we talked about Naked Gun.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, it turns out, based on this article I read, that there's been spoof movies as long as there's been movies. Even The Great Train Robbery, which we've heard about that film. The director of that film, just 2 years later, made an all-child parody of his own movie. So, and even though we've had tons of spoofs in the interim, this article, and I don't think you'll argue, is that it wasn't until 8 decades after that Hollywood's silliest genre finally came into its own. Of course, I'm talking about the 1980s. And we kicked off the decade in 1980 itself with a film created by the writer-director team Zaz. The movie Airplane, which, look, that defined spoofs for the next 10 years and certainly and beyond. But it was during those 10 years that they were done the best. And we could talk about how they've sort of, I don't know, they just started getting more terrible as time went on. But Airplane's got it all, and stuff that's in contemporary movies and TV shows, even just as moments now, including, fourth wall breaks, continuity lapses, fast-paced gags, inconsistent stakes. Anyway.
And the writing followed the model of let's take a pun and run it into the ground, or let's have a misunderstanding, be overplayed, and then
Sounds
and then
like
the
our podcast.
a little bit, yeah. And then you had the misunderstood lines that someone would take, the ones like, Shirley know how to fly a plane. Well, I don't know how to fly a plane, and don't call me Shirley, right? Like misunderstood, but no one ever took time to clear it. It's like, what did you say? They assumed it, what they heard was right, and they would act upon it. And the next line came out, and you always had to backtrack and go, wait, where did that come from? Oh, that was a misunderstanding. And that was the way they wrote. And it turned out to be, I always felt it was such a rapid fire delivery of comedy that there were plenty of bad jokes, but a good one will come along shortly. If you just hang in there, they're not all going to be humdingers, but you'll come across, that was dumb. That was dumb. That was cute. Oh, that was pretty funny. Oh, that one's dumb. It's the velocity at which the dumb jokes come at you are such that you can, the bad ones can deflect and you can just enjoy the ones you enjoy.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and I think, so John, you're touching upon some of the elements of what make a good parody. Sort of that maybe the quantity of jokes, over maybe the quality. Although when one lands, they're usually fantastic and memorable and quotable for years to come.
Yes.
Another thing is the seriousness. Certainly, Airplane established, and as we know, Airplane was based on an actual film, 1957's 0 Hour, which one of Zaz was accidentally videotaped in the middle of the night or something like that. It's almost shot for shot, or certainly beat for beat recreation of that film. For the and this plays into what John's saying, but they play these things seriously, and everybody in the world accepts whatever happens, no matter how ridiculous it is. And that's another thing. You know, you can't. They're self-referential or they sort of meta in the sense that they make fun of the genre or other films, but not themselves. You know, they don't. The joke is not about their own movie.
Right.
Anyway, and that's when we get to one of the, I think the main things about, parodies is that they're playing off of things that are in the zeitgeist, and they have to be because there's a shorthand to that. You know, it's like semiotics. Yes. All this stuff is baked into this image. Like Airplane itself starts off with, if you remember, the tail fin of the plane cutting through the clouds. And they have the Jaws, the doo-dum. Right. If we hadn't seen Jaws a few years earlier, and look, let's face it, even if you hadn't seen Jaws, you know what that was. So they're just relying on the fact that was in the ether for, Jaws came out at the beginning of the 70s, so, several years by then. And so the success of these films relied on that. I think it's interesting. It's funny in this article that they point out that that's why the spoofs of earlier this era, they relied instead on things that they were confident everybody knew. Yes. They had been around long enough. So Mel Brooks' Silent Movie, for example, when it comes out, silent movies, folks knew, but they had been around for a long time. Young Frankenstein, story that was several decades old by then. Monty Python made fun of things that were 1,000 years older, when they're talking about
biblical things,
in the Bible,
or the medieval times. Yeah,
surely people have heard about this by now.
No, they haven't, Kat, and don't call me Shirley.
But starting in the 1980s, when we started entering the era of the blockbuster, which Jaws, by the way, is credited as being the first blockbuster. Films, pop culture, TV. Started being those things that could be lampooned in a short way in these films because, odds are people saw it or know about it.
Maybe you didn't see Rocky, but you knew what the story of Rocky was just by osmosis because everyone was talking about it. It was in Mad Magazine. It was in political cartoons. Like you knew he was a boxer. You knew it was Stallone. And you could use that as a shorthand. You could have a boxer slurring his words. And it was funny because you instantly knew whether you'd seen it or not. Oh, that's supposed to be Rocky or Rocky archetype.
Or you'd heard somebody shouting, Adrian.
The first thing that hurts it now is like there's the fracturing of we don't all have the same things that we have seen. I've seen the things I saw on YouTube and I don't have cable television, or I have the movie that I downloaded, but I don't have Netflix streaming or what, and there are great films. Like people were bananas about Godzilla -1. I didn't see that for a long time until it hit Netflix just the other week. So you could not have used that, even though it was immensely popular and well revered. And only the people that made it to the theater saw it to see the translated version. And so it's all fractured. It's all fractured what our frame of reference is.
Yeah. And actually, and to point out how in the 80s it was different, we had these sort of touchstone moments. This in this piece I read this. What's the guy's name? Tom Schoen, who's the author of the book Blockbuster, How the Jaws and Jedi Generation Turned Hollywood into a Boomtown. He told Mental Floss that, quote, I would say the moment in E.T. where Elliot showed E.T. his Star Wars figures marked the point at which Blockbuster's movies began to show up on their own radar. So films themselves were even confirming what John's talking about, that, here, we all know this. You just got to hold up a Star Wars figure. And of course, that's been diluted since. Interestingly enough, Schoen also points to another 80s film that happened later in the decade that says what he says is the end of, the end of innocence. The end of the age of innocence. It's the moment in Die Hard where Hans Gruber taunts John McClane by saying he thinks he's John Wayne, or Rambo. McClane answers was always kind of partial to Roy Rogers, actually. So now you have a film, even more so being, self-reflexive on a few different films, and it may be the genre of Western more broadly. What Schoen refers to this as the, he says, movies became their own audience and spoof became the lingua franca of Hollywood mainstream, which I didn't know what that meant. It means like the common language among folks who don't necessarily speak the same language.
It sounded dirty.
Kat, after she gets through Kentucky Fried Chicken, she's just going to be on Pornhub. Lingua franca.
Lingua franca.
Oh, now I'm going to check that out myself to see.
Oh,
That was the thing. Yeah.
What have I done?
Yeah. But yeah, like John was saying, we don't have lingua franca necessarily anymore. You can't assume that we've all seen these things.
There's very few things, right? Like maybe like the Marvel movies. Okay, a lot of people have seen those, but not all of them. And another one popped into my head. Oh, like Game of Thrones. That was a thing that people were, there was a lot of talk about that.
I've never seen a single episode.
You've never, okay, well, and I have, but we were late to the game. So I kind of have seen porn.
There you go, right? Murder and porn.
Yes. But and that's, I know a lot of people have seen that. There's a lot of buzz about it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's at the same level that it used to be.
And it's such a quick flash too. I mean, if something is very much in the forefront and in the zeitgeist, something else is going to supplant it probably within a month, if not a week. Because the next thing is going to roll around. Everybody can make content, and they're going to make content that's, oh, did you see this? The dancing cat? And everybody's watching the dancing cat for 2 days. And then now you could parody that if you're quick. But if you do it 2 or 3 weeks later, they don't know what you're talking about. Things come and go so fastly. So that to be able to capitalize on it in a motion picture, give up. You can't.
Along those same lines, John, the method, the means for us being able to, or having these things fired at us at this rapid fire pace is social media. And not only will something come up and be popular and then the 24 hours something else is popular, but within that 24-hour period, someone's already lampooned it.
Yes.
Hundreds of thousands of people have already lampooned it. So what is left for the Mel Brookses of the world? The Josh Gads, dare I say, to do? I don't know.
For the deeper exploration, the deeper spoofy exploration.
I guess.
No time.
Yeah. Well, you could say that Spaceballs is a special case. I'm going to disprove my own point here in that you can assume that most people have seen several Star Wars films. I think most people have seen 4, 5, 6 at least.
Sure.
And then a subset of those have seen some of, if not one of the other films to know some other characters. You might know Kylo Ren, maybe you saw one of those, maybe you saw whatever. So I think in a Spaceball movie, you could probably play in the Star Wars universe in the way that Family Guy did in their Blue Harvest, their specials, right? Because they could do parody on that. And that was just, I think, late 90s, early 2000s, they did that. However, even Spaceballs itself was not restricted to Star Wars humor. That was the tapestry in which way they were crafting their story, but it was lampooning all kinds of stuff inside of that. And that's where I think a challenge for Spaceballs 2 would come around is no problem getting the Star Wars stuff. It's all the other jokes that a Spaceballs 2 would need to be like its predecessor. It's all been done, right? It's all been memed. It's all been published. It's all on Twitter. Yeah, that's a big challenge.
Yeah. And Kat mentioned the Marvel movies. And so, look, so far, again, I think these are challenges to whether a parody would be successful or popular today. Again, social media, either so much content coming at us or it can be parodied. Something's parodied just as quickly. We no longer have this, common language, common references. And I think the other thing that strikes me is that movies are already lampooning themselves. And we've seen a little bit of this here and there for decades now, but it's becoming more common. And some of them are we talk about this today as far as things being meta,
yes,
meaning it's self-referential.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of examples over the last, certainly, 15, 20 years and last 10, 5 years. And some of them are self-referential in different ways, but what comes to mind is the Truman Show, for example. Deadpool is a huge one. He breaks the fourth wall, constantly commenting on the film itself. Scream set the groundwork for horror movies to be more self-aware. try to destroy tropes by creating itself. Ultimately, I think it damaged its own franchise by creating its own tropes, which are trying to subvert the tropes. And once you do that, now you created a trope, and now you can't subvert that because you get the old trope. And what do you do?
Oh my gosh!
21 Jump Street had some stuff that was again self-referential, either about the TV show or about
what was the was that the Spider-Man Homecoming, where it was literally they was referencing all their other movies from within that movie.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think in comic book movies in particular seem to do this often, and some of them are when what was it, Infinity War, when Paul Rudd's explaining time travel, he references like Back to the Future and
yes,
Star Trek 4, all I don't know, these different things. Hawkeye gives a monologue in Age of Ultron where he says, in referring to the fact that he is part of the Avengers, he says none of this makes sense, which is, taking in the fan criticism and making it part of the canon. And so therefore, it seems like an effort to negate criticism of a film is to bake that criticism into the story. And therefore, I've said it already. But in a sense, they're parodying or spoofing themselves in a way to insulate themselves. But again, it removes it from the ability to maybe be parodied by someone else.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
In Skyfall, the new Q makes fun of old Q's gadgets, from the other films. I mean, which makes it hard now to like the other films.
Right.
And I see Chad here in the comments says they should do parodies of the Star Wars episodes 7, 8, 9, might make them better since they were bad movies. In Comic Book Resources, I found this article where they suggest that those films are a meta commentary on the original trilogy, and in a sense, they are. I mean, think about trying to look Luke instead of wanting to get the lightsaber in the early films, they give it to him, and what he do? He throws it off of a cliff. That kind of stupid thing.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Anyway, so again, it seems like. You can't lampoon somebody who's lampooning them. Oh, The Fall Guy, actually, too. The Fall Guy. I think, John, have you finished it? Still 15 minutes in?
No, I've not.
You haven't finished it.
Well, this isn't a spoiler, but there's this kind of running gag in The Fall Guy where they keep talking about the in-movie film not having a third act yet. They have to figure it out. And is love going to be what saves the third act? How the main character is going to come together in the third act? All these things that are comment on the film we are watching.
Yes. Yeah.
And even some of the ideas that she throws out as solving some of the movie's problems, they just do them in the movie.
Yes.
It's almost as if your premise of why don't we get parody movies anymore is invalidated by the answer that we do get them. They're just, the movies aren't parody movies. Movies have parody elements in them. So there's no need to have a standalone parody anymore.
Right.
Because you're kind of always doing it.
It's embedded.
And even the ones that try it, they do super focused, like another stupid teen movie. Like we're specifically going to make fun of these 10 movies in the genre. So make sure you know about those. They're very clear what they're going to make fun of. Or, another scary movie. The ones I'm talking about that are, they bring in a lot of big actors and they kind of go through all the tropes from Scream and Final Destination, all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, I know they're called that. I thought you would think I was generalizing.
I thought you were generalizing. Sure. Oh, okay.
No, I was. Yeah. Like there's not another teen movie, not another scary movie, and things like
Vampires
that. And they
suck.
That's the only ones that kind of do that, really.
Yeah.
Everyone else just kind of already has that parody mechanism baked in as part of the wink and nod to the audience because they know they like that. And they probably already know what the audience knows because they're wink and nodding to, like you said, this movie itself, perhaps, or just the prequel. Right. They know what you know.
Yeah, I think it's almost lazy writing now where they do that. It's like, look, we know this movie sucks, so let's make fun of it in the script.
Oh my gosh.
Brandon says, this is all very interesting to me. I love so many movies that came out before me, 70s and early 80s, and perhaps, wait, it came out before him? So the movies came out before he came out. Of his mother,
before
I guess,
he came out.
presumably. Yeah. I came to love them vicariously through my older brother who was born in 1974. I was born in 1981, so I'm at a strange point of where nostalgia leaves its mark.
Yeah.
Us too. I guess it's been happening for a long time for us. Anyway, there you go. Look, I don't know if Spaceball 2 is going to be good. I'm almost hoping that the Naked Gun does not try to be like Naked Gun because he can't. They've got to figure out a new way to do that, I think.
Right.
Maybe the same for Spaceballs.
Now, maybe the type of parody you could do today is, and I'm not saying a sequel to this film, but a film like Stripes.
Yeah.
Which is not a pure parody, but it is a comedy making light of a specific genre of film. And it's not even necessarily taking beats that you would know from other films. It's saying, okay, it's that environment. We understand what boot camp is. We understand who these guys are. We'll make a funny movie, but it's parodying a genre of film, not specific beats in that film. Okay. That you could get away with today. Or maybe that's what they're doing already, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could still do that. Yeah, there are those types of parodies that are more genre-based. Yeah, they're not specifically playing on tropes or playing on a number of different types of tropes, just specific to that. Yeah, yeah, that could work. I think so. But yeah, and like to your point, John, I guess going back to you saying, we don't maybe necessarily have seen enough of the same things. If you've seen any sci-fi movie, maybe that's enough. You don't have to see the specific one,
right?
Yes.
That kind of thing. All right. Hey, we'll see what happens. Oh, just as a side note, because I said, Josh Gad, I don't like him for the reasons I said. His co-writers, so Dan Hernandez and Benji Sammet, and I don't know anything Josh Gad's written, so, but those two guys are fantastic, and they've written a number of different things that I like, that are clever and funny and different. Dan Hernandez, for example, wrote Detective Pikachu, which I'm a big fan of.
Okay.
Anyway, there you go. Hey, wait, we got any other comments?
Chad says they did a parody of the movie The 300.
Right. Was it Meet the Spartans?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Spartan. It's, if you put in parentheses, Spartans. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's been a long time. It's been a while since we've seen those. And those weren't what they were in the 80s. Those movies, the 80s movies, they had the stars in them were stars from serious films, right? The first one had 4 very dramatic actors in them that nobody was looking for in the 80s. And otherwise, the films were populated by folks you don't know. In the 90s, in the 2000s, they try to get the biggest stars that they can afford to be in these movies and leverage that, oftentimes as a shortcut to having a good joke. And more of those movies seem to rely on, a kick in the nuts or a fart joke than having a play on words. And so I'm not a huge fan of those. But yeah, and again, that 300 movie is probably 15, 20 years old at this point, I would guess.
Wow.
Right? I mean, how old is 300? When did 300 come out?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it had to be 12, 13.
All right, Meet the Spartans came out in 2008, so 16 years old.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
All right, hey, that was the show, Kat.
And tonight, we'd like to thank everyone who supports us on Patreon. Everyone. And those everyones are Jillian Perry, Lisa Clark, Nathan Wallace, Anonymous, good old Anonymous, Craig Anderson, Craig Rustin, Karen Flieger, Keith Sheehan, Kyle Palladino, RC from the NYC, and Rick Parker.
Yeah, just always end on Rick Parker, then I know when you're ending. Okay.
And thank you especially to our Secret of Our Success level Patreon supporters, Marcus Taylor, Tony Great, Nick Guillory, Matt Marino, John Henderson, and Brandon Greer.
Yeah, and a very special thanks to Marcus, who recently upped his contribution. Thank you so much, Marcus.
Oh my gosh. Thank
so
you,
grateful
Marcus.
for that.
What a guy.
And we're going to give a very special thanks to Tony Great. I think probably beginning next week. I'm hopeful because we'll probably, I'm hoping to start announcing what we're up to in September and the generosity of Tony Great and how that is helping make that happen. All right. Hey, if you can help, we'd love to have your support. You can go to patreon.com/1980s now to find out how. Or if you don't know how to do that, just do something else, something that's free. Go to Facebook, follow us there, share a post, tell a friend. Seriously, just tell one person. You like 1980s pop culture like me, right? Listen to these 3 people. One guy said,
grab their phone out of their hand,
right?
Download an app, subscribe, plug the things in their ears, and go, now, listen.
All right.
Damn it.
Duct tape around the head so they can't take the earbuds out.
I did that the other day.
Duct tape we listened to Gen X growing up. Yeah, I know. It's good.
It was so good, it was blowing your AirPods out of your ears.
I
Understandable.
gotta secure these things.
It was when George was judging the first round, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And then I was like, oh, you know what? No, okay, he's good at this. He's good at this. All right, I don't have to worry George is ever going to hear this because he'll never listen to our show.
Never listen. You're
All right. Hey, so he won't hear us next time when we chat with you again on 1980s Now.
But you'll hear us next time.
Her name is Rio, and she dances on the sand.